So here is the next video in our Unit 4 video note videos. This one is now going over section 4.3, which is finding slope and rate of change. So this first part of the video is going to be just about finding slope, and then we might be able to get the rate of change. That might be a separate video. We'll see what we can do with that. So let's just go ahead and go on to slope. Alright, so dealing with slope, that is basically also known as rate of change. Again, rate of change and slope, they're basically the same thing. Again, we normally denote slope as the letter M, which is some of you have seen in our equations that we've been dealing with later. Couple things here to note. Slope, biggest thing that a lot of people remember it as is rise over run. Okay, slope is rise over run. Now, also, it's the change in y over the change in x. And then basically this right here, this is basically our slope formula if we're given 2 points, an x1 and a x1 and a y1, and an x2 and a y2. Now, a couple things to remember about just kind of the general nature of slope. Remember, rise over run. It's basically how much the line, it's essentially talking about the steepness of a line. It's how much the line goes up over how much the line goes left to right. Remember, your y values are the ones that go on the top of the fraction, and the x values go on the bottom of the fraction. Now, a couple things here. Slope is always written as a fraction, so it's always going to be basically a number over a number, so one number over another number. We want to always simplify those fractions or make them whole numbers. Again, if you ever get something where, for example, if it's, say, 3 over 1, we can just write that as 3, okay? Or any number over 1 is just that number on the top. And we never write slope as a mixed number, so if we ever get an improper fraction, like, let's say, just for an example, 8 over 5, don't write that as a mixed number. Just leave it as 8 over 5. And then our negative number only goes with the top or the bottom. So this last one here, I wouldn't really worry too much about it. Let's just go on to kind of some examples of slope. So there's different types of slope that we're going to be kind of working with. So basically, starting off with the first types, we have our positive slope and our negative slope. Now, we're always looking basically from left to right when it comes to our slopes. And when we're dealing with positive slope, we have a line. Remember, we're talking about straight lines here. Our positive slope is going to look like this. It increases as we go from left to the right. And then our negative slope is basically the opposite. From left to right, it decreases. So it goes up, it starts up and negative and goes down as you go to the right there. Now, a zero slope looks a little bit different. Zero slope is going to be straight horizontal. No, that's not exactly straight horizontal, but it's going to be a flat horizontal line. Now, on the bottom here, it says 0 is on top. That's referring to the fraction. That basically is telling you that you're going to have on the top of your fraction a 0 and then some x value, some value that we got for our change in x on the bottom. So this is the form that it's going to look. It's going to be 0 on top and then some number on the bottom. And then with our undefined line, it's a vertical line, which is a straight up and down line, like this. We call that an undefined. Now, it says 0 is on bottom. It's essentially the opposite of this, where we would have some y value on the top and then 0 on the bottom. So some y value on the top, and then it's going to be 0 on the bottom. All right? So this is basically what those two slopes are going to look like when you get there. Again, it's basically going to be 0 over some number when it's a 0 slope, or it's going to be some number over 0 for undefined slope. Okay. So first example of finding slope, again, we want to try and find some slope, is basically we're given a graph and they basically tell us, hey, go find the slope of that graph. Now, what we can do here is all we really need is this 2 points. So for this one, it'd be that point, and for this one, it'd be this point right here. And remember, slope is basically rise over run. Remember, and rise basically accounts for up or down. Again, it basically tells you how much you rise up or down in a run. Now think about it. You don't run up or down. We run, kind of straight left or right. So run is basically our left to right. So basically what we want to do is we just want to count how much we go up and how much we go to the left or right to reach basically to get from this point here to this point here. So let's count. Let's count straight. So for this one, we're going to go up or down first. I'm going to have to count up. So I'm going to go up 1, 2, 3, 4. So I counted up 4 spots. And then I need to count to the over left or right. This time I'm going to count to the right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I count to the right 6 spots. Remember, your rise goes on the top. You put rise number, so the number that you count up or down would go on the top as 4, and the number that you count left or right, this time we counted right 6, goes on the bottom. And remember, we always simplify our fractions out to be 2 over 3, and that right there is our slope. All right. Now let's go over here. Now there's going to be times where they don't really give you nice points like they did with this graph here, so you kind of have to make some points. Now, I can tell you for certain that this point right here is at 0 is at 0, negative 1. And I can tell you that this point here is at, let's see, 3, negative 3. Pick points that are absolutely precise, that you can clearly explain to me where they are on the graph. Like you couldn't really tell me where this point is. I mean, you could tell me that you go down 1, but you can't tell me exactly how many spots you go to the left or to the right there. So count me spots, so give me points that you can absolutely positively describe where they are on the graph. And then as we did over here, we just repeat the process. Well, let's start, we could start with this point right here. And I'm going to count, I need to go from this point over down to this point here. So I start up going up or down. I have to go down, so I'm going to count down 1, 2, 3. Counted down 3 spots. And then I need to count left or right. I need to go right 1, 2, 3, 4 spots. And remember, rise over run, the number that I counted up or down, that I counted down 3 spots, so that's going to go on the top of my fraction. And then the number that I count left or right is going to go on the bottom of my fraction, which is going to be the number 4. And I can't simplify 3 over 4 any further, so that right there is my final slope. Alrighty, so now we've dealt with finding slope between when we're given a graph. Now we need to find a slope when given 2 points. Now this is when I bring out my slope formula. Again, y1, y2 minus y1, x2 minus x1. And we basically do that. We do our y's minus our y's and our x's minus our x's. So let's go ahead and label them. Let's do 2 as my y1 and 4 as my y2, or negative 1 as my x1, 3 as my x2. So remember, y2 minus y1, I'm going to plug in 4 for my y2, 2 for my y1 to get 4 minus 2. And then on the bottom, I start with my x2, 3, and then I subtract a negative, don't forget the negative sign when you're subtracting, a negative 1. Which just turns into a plus sign. So, and then we simplify from there. 4 minus 2 is 2. 3 plus 1 is 4. We simplify our fraction out. We get ourselves 1 over 2. Okay? Now, for this one over here, we could also use the formula y1 minus y2 over x1 minus x2. Okay? Again, it doesn't really, we could use either of these formulas. We are still going to get the same answer. So, let's see, I'm going to again label my values x1, y1, x2, y2, and then I'm going to go ahead and solve. y1 minus y2, that's going to be 2 minus 20. And then negative 2, x1 minus x2, negative 2 minus my x2, which is negative 10, so minus 10. Minus a negative turns into a plus, minus a negative turns into plus. I go ahead and add these. I get myself on the top 22 over negative 2 plus 10 is 8. I simplify that fraction down. I will get myself 11 over 4. Okay. Now, one thing that I just kind of want to reiterate is again, it doesn't really matter, which side of this formula you use. Just make sure, a little trick that you should basically play with, that you should do to make sure you put the numbers in the right spots is, I kind of erased the -1 there. So big trick that you can use is circle the numbers that are directly above and below each other. And then go back to your original problem. These numbers that you've circled together should be in the same ordered pair. And if you look here, 3 and 4, those are in the same ordered pair. 2 and -1, that's in the same ordered pair. Hey, I'm good. If you go back over here, circle the top numbers, -2 and 2, those are in the same ordered pair. I'm good. This used to be a -10 and a -20. They're both in the same ordered pair. I'm good. Doesn't matter, all right? Now, let's go to this one here. Start with our y's on top. I'm going to go with, well, let's just do 5 minus 5, okay? And they're both the same y, so it really doesn't matter where I start, where I go on the bottom. So I could do 3 minus 2, which gets me 0 over 5. Now remember, what is our slope called when the 0 is on the top? Remember that it is also just a 0 slope, because my 0 is on the top of my fraction. And then let's go over to this one. Let's do my y's on the top. I'm going to start with 0 minus 3. And then, well, it looks like our x's are basically the same, so it doesn't really matter where I put them on the bottom. So I do a -1, remember, minus a -1. And again, minus a negative is just plus. 0 minus 3 is -3. -1 plus 1 is, well, 0. And remember, what do we call it when the 0 is on the bottom of our fraction here? It is called undefined slope. That's going to be an undefined slope. All right. So again, kind of finding the slope between the 2 points, very crucial skill to have. Let's move on to the next slide there, and that is it for this one. Briefly kind of go over rate of change for 4.3b. So now this is a little bit, I'm going to change this up real quick. Go. So let's go ahead and go here. Now, rate of change is essentially the change. Again, it's the same thing as slope, but it basically changes quantity. Oh, excuse me. It's a quantity over time. Now, it's not always going to be quantity over time. Sometimes it's going to be quantity over another quantity. But whenever you see a word problem, because basically rate of change is find the slope of a word problem or of a table like this, you always want to put the time on the bottom of your slope. So let's do example 1 real quick here. Let's see, I have candle height. So again, I'm setting up my rate of change, my candle height over, and then I have time per hours. Well, remember, time is always on the bottom, and then whatever my quantity is, my candle height is going to go on the top there. And so now I find 2 distinct points. I'm going to choose this one and this one. I can clearly explain to you where those are on the graph. And when I'm given a graph, I'm just going to count up or down how many spaces and left or right how many spaces. So I'm going to count down 1, 2 spaces, and I'm going to count over 1 space. And then on the top, I'm going to do 2. I'm going to go 1. So remember, up or down 2, over 1. And remember, this slope right here is a negative slope, so it's going to turn into a -2 over 1, or just -2. Now this one, when I'm given the table, remember, so we have set up our rate of change. Total cost is on the top. Time is on the bottom. Time always goes on the bottom. And then from here, we basically just do our slope formula. We basically find the change from here to here, and we do that by subtracting 8.25 minus 6. And then on the bottom, we find the change from these right here, 5 minus 4. And again, these have to be in the same ordered pair. 6 and 4 go together. 5 and 8.25 go together. If I simplify that out, I'm going to get myself 2.25 over 1. And that's basically $2.5 over 1 day. And that's how you find rate of change there. Thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you on the next video.